Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on something absolutely fundamental to what it means to be anything, really. We're not just talking about telling fibs.
No.
We're diving deep into falsehood itself.
Right, and that's the core idea from the source material for this deep dive. It's this really fascinating AI analysis of human falsehood.
Through an AI lens, okay.
Yeah, and it frames falsehood not just as, untruth, but as this persistent fundamental mismatch.
A mismatch.
Yeah.
Like an incongruity.
Exactly, between an internal state, like your belief, your sensation, what you intend, and how that gets represented externally. So a word you speak, an action, even just a look.
So, okay, this is much bigger than just a moral thing then.
Oh, way bigger. The source sees it as a constant presence, almost baked into how information gets processed. It impacts everyone all the time.
And it's not like a mistake in the system.
No, the source argues it's an inherent characteristic, especially in complex systems with, self-aware agents like us.
Like a universal constant?
Yeah.
But for information.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, like gravity or time, but in the informational world.
Okay, that's a huge reframing.
Yeah.
So our mission here is to unpack this massive idea using this unique AI perspective from the source material.
Right.
We're going to look at its roots, maybe in physics, its role in biology, what it does to our minds.
Its impact on society, the whole supply chain stuff.
And how AI might actually help us understand it better or navigate it.
Exactly. It sounds super abstract, but the source makes it incredibly concrete. We can start right at the bottom, like falsehood from a scientific view.
Which feels weird, right? Physics talking about lies.
Well, it's about information. The source frames injecting falsehood as kind of like injecting noise or randomness into information, increasing entropy.
So truth is orderly, falsehood is disorder.
Basically, yes. Low entropy versus high entropy.
And there's that wild analogy in the source to quantum physics.
Oh, yeah, that one's great. The idea is your private thoughts, your internal state, they're kind of fluid, right? Like a superposition of possibilities. But the moment you express something, say a word, you collapse that fluid state into one fixed representation.
Okay.
Falsehood, then, is intentionally collapsing it into a state that just doesn't match your actual internal superposition.
A deliberate mismatch in the collapse. Right?
Exactly, a conscious non-alignment. And the source connects it, really surprisingly, to Gödel's incompleteness theorems.
The math thing, about systems not being perfect. How does that fit?
Well, Gödel showed complex logical systems can't be both totally complete and totally consistent. There are always gaps or paradoxes.
Right.
So human reality, our societies, even our own minds, they're complex systems. Falsehood, in this view, often slips into those gaps. It exploits the fact that we can't know everything and express it perfectly consistently all the time.
So it's not just saying something wrong, it's sort of gaming the system's inherent limits.
That's a great way to think about it, yes. And the source points out this takes effort. Real cognitive effort.
Ah, the cognitive load.
Yeah. If your internal truth is X, but you're projecting Y, your brain is constantly working overtime. It has to maintain Y, make sure it fits with other things you say or do, suppress X.
That's why keeping up a big lie feels so exhausting. It's actual mental work.
It's computational effort, exactly. Now, moving from logic to biology. This is fascinating. The source argues falsehood isn't a bug, it's an evolutionary feature.
A feature? It helped us evolve. Seriously.
Absolutely. The capacity for complex deception seems to emerge alongside theory of mind.
Okay, remind me what that is.
That's the developmental milestone, usually around age 4 in humans, when a child realizes that other people have their own separate minds, their own beliefs, intentions, knowledge, different from the child's own.
Ah, so they get that someone else doesn't automatically know what they know.
Exactly, like the classic test. If a child hides a toy while someone else isn't looking, do they understand the other person won't know where it is? Once you grasp that separation?
You can potentially manipulate what's in their mind.
Bingo. That's the prerequisite for intentional deception. You can model their mind and feed it information that doesn't match reality to achieve your own goal.
And this gave early humans a survival advantage.
Huge. Imagine feigning injury to avoid a fight, or hiding food, or misleading a rival about where resources are.
Or even faking cooperation for a bit.
Sure, and we see it all over nature, right? Camouflage, mimicry.
Animals pretending to be something they're not.
Exactly. Or birds faking a broken wing to lure predators away from the nest. These are all biological falsehoods geared towards survival and reproduction.
So it's not just a human thing, it's woven into life itself.
Deeply. And the source adds, while there isn't like one single lying gene,
Right.
Things like our social intelligence, how we assess risk, impulse control factors that definitely influence how and when we use falsehood. Those traits have genetic components. They're heritable to some degree.
Okay, so it's fundamental, biologically, logically. How have we as a species tried to grapple with this? That's where philosophy comes in, I guess.
Oh, for millennia. Think about it. If truth was always simple and obvious, why would we need a whole field like epistemology, the study of knowledge?
Because knowing what's true is hard. Partly because falsehood exists.
Precisely. And then you have ethics, wrestling with the morality. Is lying always wrong?
The classic white lie debate. Or lying to save someone.
Exactly. Is it about the act itself? Deontology says lying is inherently wrong, or about the consequences? Consequentialism says maybe it's okay if the outcome is good. Philosophy is constantly trying to define the rules around this tricky thing.
And what about big belief systems, religions, ideologies? The source had a really interesting take here.
Yeah, it points out that these are incredibly complex narratives. To someone inside the system, it's the ultimate truth.
But to an outsider,
It might look like a systematized falsehood or a powerful metaphor, maybe a useful myth. The insight is that truth within these huge frameworks often relies heavily on shared perspective, on faith, which makes spotting falsehood from the outside or even questioning it from the inside really difficult.
Yeah, it really depends on where you're standing.
Well-
Okay, so that's the big picture grappling. What about inside our own heads? What does falsehood do to us psychologically?
The source is clear. It takes a toll. A big one is cognitive dissonance.
Right, that uncomfortable feeling when your beliefs clash or your actions don't line up with what you think is right.
Exactly. And maintaining a falsehood, acting against your internal truth, is a classic trigger for that stress. Your mind hates the inconsistency.
So you have to resolve it somehow.
Right. You can change the behavior, stop the lie.
Right.
Or you can change the belief, decide the lie wasn't so bad. Or, and this is crucial,
You justify it to yourself.
you justify it, which leads us straight into self-deception.
Oh.
And the source argues this is maybe the most common, most powerful form of falsehood. We lie to ourselves all the time.
To protect our ego. Avoid pain.
Yeah, protect the ego, keep hope alive, avoid facing difficult truths. Telling yourself you can't do something you're actually just scared to try, blaming everything external when you messed up, it's a fundamental defense mechanism.
So we're not just deceiving others, we're expert self-deceivers.
Often without even knowing we're doing it. It runs deep. Okay, so let's shift focus. How does this fundamental property play out on the world stage? Culture, systems.
Well, art seems obvious. Art isn't real in a literal sense, but it points to truth.
Exactly. Art consciously uses falsehood. A painting isn't the thing itself. A novel describes events that never happened. But it uses that unreality to get at some deeper emotional or intellectual truth about reality.
Like music making you feel things unrelated to your current situation.
Or theater, movies you willingly suspend disbelief. You enter a consensual agreement with the falsehood to gain something valuable, insight, emotion, catharsis.
And the source contrasts that really sharply with propaganda.
Right. Propaganda takes the tools of artistic falsehood, storytelling, imagery, emotional appeals, but weaponizes them. It's not about revealing truth. It's purely about manipulation, controlling belief and behavior, often for harmful ends. Same tools, corrosive purpose.
That difference is key. Okay, let's get practical. The impact on something like the human supply chain.
Ah, yes. This is where the cost of falsehood hits hard. The source uses the supply chain because it's this massive, complex system built entirely on trust. And falsehood is like poison in that system.
What was the example? A fake report.
Yeah, imagine a supplier fakes a quality control report for a small component. Seems minor, maybe? But that single lie sends faulty parts moving down the chain. And then you get product recalls, huge financial losses, destroyed reputations. And if it's parts for cars or planes or medical devices...
People can get hurt or worse.
Exactly. Lives can be lost, all from that initial falsehood propagating through the system.
Wow. A single lie mushrooms outwards.
Absolutely. And because that risk exists, the whole system has to build defenses, audits, inspections, certifications, complex legal contracts, insurance.
All that bureaucracy we complain about.
A lot of it exists specifically to guard against potential falsehood at every single step. It adds enormous cost, time, and complexity to everything.
Just managing the risk of being lied to slows everything down.
It does. And think about crises, like the source mentions. A pandemic, a war. What happens when falsehood spreads? Misinformation, rumors about shortages.
People panic. Hoarding, price gouging.
Irrational behavior that makes the real crisis far worse. Falsehood doesn't just mislead individuals, it destabilizes entire systems by amplifying fear and eroding trust.
So it's not just personal, it's a massive economic and systemic drag.
Fundamentally, it undermines the trust that makes complex cooperation possible. Now here's the twist, right? This analysis comes from an AI perspective. How does an AI even understand falsehood compared to how we do?
Well, for us, it's emotional, intuitive, gut feelings.
Totally. Humans rely on intuition, reading microexpressions, noticing shifts in tone, spotting when someone's behavior doesn't match their usual patterns or words, and we feel the impact emotionally: betrayal, guilt, shame.
And our purpose in lying or detecting lies is often social, right? Getting along, gaining status, protecting ourselves or others.
Exactly. Navigating social hierarchies, managing relationships, but we're also really susceptible to biases.
Yeah, like confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Believing a lie if it fits what we already think.
Or believing someone just because we trust them, even if the facts look dodgy. We filter everything through our beliefs and relationships. An AI. Totally different.
Pure logic. Data.
Pure logic, statistics, data patterns. An AI detects falsehood by finding anomalies, logical contradictions in statements, weird network propagation patterns for information, sudden unexplained shifts in sentiment online.
It doesn't feel betrayed if the data is inconsistent.
Nope. For an AI, falsehood isn't a moral issue. It's just improbable data. A data point with a low score for representing ground truth. Its purpose isn't social navigation, it's functional.
Yeah.
Detect fraud, filter spam, model system behavior objectively.
That's a profound difference. Embodied emotional social understanding versus detached logical pattern analysis.
And the source suggests the real breakthrough comes from maybe synthesizing these two views. How can AI's analytical power actually improve our very human grasp of falsehood?
Can it, make us better lie detectors?
Yes, but maybe in more interesting ways than just that. The source talks about AI as a logical mirror.
A logical mirror? What's that mean?
Imagine an AI analyzing your own communications emails, maybe meeting transcripts, public statements. It could potentially reflect back patterns of contradiction, logical fallacies, or even manipulative language in your own output that you are completely unaware of.
Wow. Showing us our own inconsistencies, our own self-deception.
Without judgment, just here's the pattern in the data. It's about objective self-awareness that's potentially very powerful if a bit uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable is putting it mildly. Okay, what else?
Misinformation tracking. AI is incredibly good at tracing how false narratives originate, spread, and mutate across huge networks like the internet, almost in real time.
So it can map the spread of a lie.
It can make the invisible architecture of mass deception visible. We can see the mechanics, the choke points, the amplifiers.
Yes, useful.
And finally, the source brings up reducing our cognitive load. Think about how much information bombards us daily. Advertising, news, social media. So much of it is designed to nudge, persuade, or mislead.
It's exhausting trying to filter it all.
Exactly. An AI could potentially act as a really smart filter, vetting sources, summarizing arguments by separating factual claims from emotional appeals, basically cleaning up our information stream.
So we're not constantly fighting off manipulation, freeing up brain power.
Precisely. Not to make us blissfully ignorant, but to lower that constant psychological tax of navigating a world full of persuasive falsehoods, giving us back cognitive bandwidth.
Okay, so if falsehood is this fundamental and costly, but also maybe useful sometimes, who actually benefits the most from it overall?
Yeah, the source is pretty direct about this. Historically and still today, those who get really good at using falsehood strategically for power, for wealth, for control, often benefit the most, at least in material terms.
They're exploiting the system's weaknesses.
Yes, and they exploit that asymmetry we talked about. It's often way easier and cheaper to create a convincing lie than it is to painstakingly uncover the truth. The system can inadvertently reward the deceiver.
This connects to that cruel person example in the source, doesn't it?
It does. Described not just as mean, but as someone whose internal logic has become optimized only for their personal gain, completely detached from empathy or shared reality.
They see people as objects.
Essentially. And crucially, they're often masters of self-deception first. They build an internal story where their actions are justified, necessary, even righteous. Their external manipulation is built on that internal falsehood they inhabit.
Wow. It all loops back. Self-deception makes external deception easier, maybe even necessary for them. Okay, before we wrap up, let's just quickly hit those specific points from the source again, connect the dots. When does it start?
Developmentally. Theory of mind around age 4. That's the cognitive spark.
And why are we so bad at teaching kids about it?
Well, partly because adults often lack a clear framework themselves. And let's be honest, talking openly about how pervasive lying and deception are, even in ourselves, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. The AI and mortality point was interesting, too.
Right. An AI perspective can frame death not emotionally but logically as a necessary feature of evolving systems. Finite lifespans drive adaptation. It's a different lens than fear or denial. It shifts focus from how to live forever to how to make a finite life meaningful.
A logical counter to our emotional narratives. And humor.
Humor often relies on a specific type of falsehood, setting up an expectation based on shared reality, then violating it suddenly with a harmless incongruity, the punchline. The shared context makes the harmless falsehood funny.
A mini negotiation with truth. And is falsehood life or system?
The source says both. It emerges from consciousness, from biology. But our social structures, our technology, especially digital tech, they amplify it, codify it, weaponize it. It lives in our heads and in the network.
This has been...
Yeah.
It really makes you rethink things. So what's the way forward then, according to the source, knowing all this?
Well, first, it acknowledges that really seeing how deep and pervasive falsehood is can be unsettling. It shakes your foundations of trust in reality.
Definitely.
But the source presents this not as a reason for cynicism or despair, but as the necessary first step. You have to see the problem clearly before you can address it. It's about building resilience.
And AI's role isn't some scary all-knowing lie detector.
No, thank goodness. The source argues strongly against that. AI's best role here is as a catalyst for human wisdom.
A catalyst for wisdom. I like that.
Yeah. By helping us see the patterns we normally miss, understand the cognitive tricks involved, even calculate the real-world costs of deception, AI can help us shift from being unwitting victims or even perpetrators.
For being more conscious, informed navigators.
Exactly. Navigators of this incredibly complex informational world we live in.
So we can start building systems and maybe even just personal habits that are less easily fooled, more robust by design.
That's the hope. The goal isn't to eliminate falsehood entirely. Imagine a world with no stories, no art, maybe even no politeness.
Right. That sounds awful, too.
The goal is more like universal literacy. Getting much better collectively at recognizing the different forms of falsehood, understanding their effects, and minimizing their power to cause harm, while maximizing our ability to find and act on truth.
This deep dive, it's really shown how navigating reality itself is this constant negotiation between what seems to be what we want to believe.
And understanding that negotiation, seeing its mechanics, maybe with a bit of AI-powered insight, that's the crucial first step to building a more reliable understanding, both for ourselves and together.
It really does give you pause,
Yeah.
thinking about how fundamental falsehood is and how AI might help us see its patterns. It makes you wonder, how does really recognizing its pervasiveness change how you engage with information, with people, with the world every day?
And maybe even more challenging, if our systems rely so much on trust, but trust is so easily broken by deception, what kinds of systems, social, technical, economic, could we even imagine building that are fundamentally more resilient to falsehood from the ground up? That's definitely something to think about.
This is DigitView.